So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regen Ray. Hello, soil lovers, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. I'm so excited to dig deeper today. We're going to hang out with our friendly friends at Nutrisoil. Nakala, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Ray. Good to be here.
Share with our wonderful soil-loving communities what Nutrisoil is all about and how you help regenerate our soils.
Sure. So we are a big worm farm, and we sell to broadacre farmers and pasture across Australia. I'd say half pasture, half cropping. It's used as a seed inoculant and as a in-furrow and as a foliar fertiliser. So.
Awesome. And so you say a big worm farm. What does that look like for our listeners? How do you visualise a big worm farm?
Yeah, so we have kilometres of worms. We have millions of worms. We have tried to count them, but they change all the time compared, with the seasons and the conditions.
They don't sit still.
Yeah, but if you can imagine big, long composting rows, we have composting rows with the top layer all full of composting earthworms.
Lovely. And I've had the privilege of joining your team and seeing you there in person. And I think it was very impressive to see. And that's why I went with that question, is because when I think of a worm farm, I think more of like a wooden box or like a plastic box that you buy from these shops. It's a bit more small scale, but then seeing these massive, kind of like windrows, like, of soil, and seeing it getting fed from the top with your machinery. It was very impressive, to say the least. And then all your capturing techniques was super impressive.
Yeah, I would say we're the biggest worm farm in Australia.
Yeah, and did this come as a bit of a innovation from a problem that was trying to be solved locally, or is it always intended to be set up as a worm farm?
Well, originally, my father-in-law, Nakala Maddock, he was a dairy farmer, and he had a chemical accident and had a pesticide doused all over him. And he had very bad medical condition from that. He got depression. He was in bed for a year. He had a small family and was in and out of hospital. He's still affected by that. Like, he still has these bouts of depression, and that's directly related to the poison from the pesticide. He had to keep farming, and he couldn't use chemicals anymore. If he goes near chemicals, he gets a headache. So he worked out how to use vermicompost. So first of all, he was spreading the vermicompost across his farm, and then they started seeing the leach shake come out, and they went, oh, we'll try that too. And the results were just amazing. So they decided to use it across their farm. They stopped using superphosphate. And other farmers just started looking and seeing what they were doing and saying, can we have some of that? And then they started going to field days and people started buying it. Then I think it started getting quite big. Then in 2008, they decided to sell the family farm and another business they had and make a purpose-built Nutrisoil facility closer to where we could use access transport and manure and things like that. So yeah, it's awesome. Been a journey from 1995 to now.
Wow, that's I love that kind of like, it's like realizing that there's a bit of a concern from a health point of view, and then solving that problem and then turning it into a business that then helps millions of people across the world and change that landscape. And, and even to go down that level of building a purpose facility, a lot of people tend to just make do with what they've got, but like to have that initiative to go and say, no, we're going to sell the farm and set this up and turn it into an impactful business. It's been quite fun. I know Helen and Hugo from Farming Secrets have been around the Nutrisoil brand for, probably met at these field days and had a lot of fun capturing content and sharing information. You mentioned vermicompost and vermiculture. Can you explain to our soil lovers what that kind of means and the benefits of that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there's lots of different worm products out there. So the vermicompost is the manure from the worm, and the liquid that we collect is like a vermi wash. So if you can think about what a worm makes when it's burrowing through the soil, It's always trying to create an environment that is really beneficial to its succession. That's what animals do. They want to breed and have food sources around. So what comes out of the worm is everything we collect. So it's a broad base of nutrients. So if you think of your soil test, all of that is actually in a worm in an available form in a small amount. So they're letting that out into the soil and they're sharing that with plants. Like it's an intelligent thing to do because they want plants to grow so they have a food source. Wow. So that comes out of the worm. And then these other things which we call non-nutrient factors, which are amino acids, they come out of a worm as well. And amino acids are long strains of compounds. So you've got like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. And what they do is they twist and turn into all sorts of different patterns and turn into all of these complex compounds. So we've got things like hormones, enzymes, antibiotics. So then that means that all of these things are going out into the soil which plants can use. They have signalling products that come out. So other microbes can signal with each other, plants can signal with each other. And then that in turn just makes plants grow. So they've got big root systems, they've got other microbes around. So it just means that there's a food source and there's also a healthy environment for them.
Wow, sounds like magic in a bottle.
Yeah, so that's what they call it. They call it liquid gold, but I think that's a bit gimmicky, so I try not to use it.
Oh, we're going to
say, yeah, so they say it's like gold going back into the earth, you know. So we're mining the earth all the time, but we're like putting this gold back in again. So, yeah, we have these big, long composting rows and we mist the system. So it's not like a big flood of water. The misting is it's on a sprinkling system, so it's a number of times according to the rainfall. And that's why we call it a vermi wash. It's collecting all the mucus off the worm. It's collecting all of the microbes that the worm makes. And if you think of a worm, it's like the best compost tea machine you can make. So they've got this bioreactor in their gut, and it culls the bad microbes and it excretes the good microbes. And it's making all of these amino acids, which make all of these complexities that the soil needs to function and the plants need to function. So if they do let some pathogenic microbes out, and that's about balance, but mostly they are anaerobic and good microbes. So they'll cull the bad ones, but let the good ones out. So, yeah, it is really amazing, and it's something that we're constantly trying to educate people about, because it's had such people go, oh, why would I pay money for that? Why would I? And they call it snake liquid. We've had all of these things in the past 20 years, but I would have to say in the last 5 years, it is not alternative anymore. There are so many farmers coming on board. And Lynn, my mother-in-law, she used to always say, it's going to be this year. We're going to get big this year. We're going to reach more farmers this year. And I would say it has absolutely happened. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. It's so good to hear that. And, it just proves that nature has a way of solving problems. The way that the worms work. And I love, you were referring to it as a worm wash, and collecting all those minerals and then bottling them up and helping farmers spread that on their farms, and is just, so is this a bit of a, like, does this then help worm colonies grow on other farms, or is it something that needs to always be put on?
You can get to a point, and this is when we were talking about inputs before, where you've got this highly functioning soil. So every farming system is different, and I'm hesitant to say you've got a highly functioning soil, you don't need to use anything, because then you'll go, right, grazing is all I need. But it can be at times if you get it right. And cropping, some people are in that transitional phase and they'll need other inputs. So things like soft rock phosphate or guano or lime or a little bit of nitrogen, some trace minerals. But then you've got farmers that have been sort of through this for 10 years, and all they need is a worm liquid and a compost extract or a vermicast extract. but you've got to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together. So it's about, when you get to that point, it's often when you've got perennial grasses growing over summer and you've got really good grazing management, and you've got a really good farmer who has intent and good spiritual connection to the land. So we've got farmers at the start and farmers at the end. Some farmers, you'll start with coating your seed. That's the first place a farmer would start, is coating their seed, because you're coating the seed with beneficial nutrients, all of those microbes, and you're coating it with all of those complexities of amino acids, which turn into hormones and enzymes and antibiotics. And you've also got fulvic and humic acids. So if you think you've got a seed inoculant, that's exactly what you'd want to put on it. So a worm liquid does that. And we see time and time again these big root systems compared to something that hasn't been inoculated.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen videos of like this paddock and that paddock has it, doesn't have it, and the root system is just tenfold different.
Yes.
And I love that, because I think we live in a world of like seeing is believing, unfortunately, and so this is, sometimes people need to see that.
I absolutely agree, and that's why I always say start with coating your seed and compare it to a seed that has like a fungicide on it, and just see the difference in a high input system. But I mean, a worm liquid can even work in a high input system. We were talking to a farmer the other day in Jerilderie. They had a corn crop. They were putting under 800 kilos of nitrogen under their corn, and their corn had gone purple. And his wife was from the city, loved permaculture, and said, can you just please try something else, try something that's more biologically friendly? And he put out Nutrisoil, and within 4 days, his plant had turned from purple to green. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because I'm often I have concerns about those high input users using Nutrisoil, that it's just making them feel happy and hormonal, but it actually did something, and he from then on was able to reduce his nitrogen. So there's no one out there that this isn't suitable for. Yeah,
and that's a really good point as well, where like sometimes people do one or two things, regeneratively or naturally, and then say, that's it, but then there's all this hidden world behind the world. And I want to go a little bit deeper in that whole input side of things. But when I speak to regenerative farmers and people who want to go a little bit more holistic, there's this kind of thing of like zero inputs. And then at the end of the day, like water is an input, air is an input, all the minerals in the soil is an input. Where does Nutrisoil fit within that? And, are some people a bit scared because they think that it's an input and they want to be zero input?
Yeah, we're very conscious of not saying that Nutrisoil is the only thing that you need. We know that a worm liquid is part of the system. And people are in transition as well. So if you have someone who transitions carefully for 10 years, they're going to have a really high functioning soil where their inputs are a lot lower. But like a multi-species cover crop is still an input. You might not be using any fertilizer with it, but the way that can change a soil's profile and nutrient availability for the next crop is amazing. So if we're farming the soil, we're always going to have to be managing it, and we have to manage our team of microbes, we have to manage our plants, we have to manage our animals, and we have to manage our inputs. So I would say that you never stop learning and you never stop tweaking a little, but don't get hung up on inputs.
Yeah. I love how you've mentioned the word management, because that's where it comes into it. It's like being a good manager, knowing what to use at the right time, and just having your finger on the pulse and being an observer of your farm and just learning how to manage it a little bit different. And the fact that everyone is on a different journey, and every bit of land and farm business has its own goals and vision and needs to operate a little bit differently. And I love that you give, that permission to think that way.
Yes, absolutely. But I think don't micromanage. Always try and look at the bigger picture. But when you need to help that soil, when you need to help that system, and always be the helper.
Yeah, love that. And I love how like you've just told a story about someone who had a problem and then within 4 days it's changed. And I think we do live in a world where we want quick fixes, and I want to be mindful of that. And so with your expertise on Nutrisoil and people and farmers using the product, like what is a normal transition period? You know, because we live in a world where everything's quick and easy and download and instant gratification, and nature wants to take its time sometimes. So how do you sit with that?
Yeah, I'm also very careful never to say that you'll get immediate response. It takes time to learn how to look for responses, and a response could be increase in beneficial insects, and it could be your cattle preferentially grazing because it's a sweeter plant, because it's photosynthesizing more, it's got more nutrient integrity in it. It could be healthier cattle. It could be that you don't see any difference because you've got something holding you back. Like if you've got compacted soil that has a lot of weed burden and you've got your stock in there the whole time, I don't think you're going to see a lot of change very quickly. But I know change is happening, but it's ultra slow. So you have to go, well, am I prepared for ultra slow change? Probably not. So I want to be profitable. I want my land to regenerate. You might need to ameliorate that compaction so that there's oxygen in there so that the microbes can do their job and drive around in those highways that you make with all of the aggregates.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point as well. And I think this is like a little bit of a starting point. Like being able to see the compaction in your soil makes more of a difference when you start realizing how the soil functions. And so by putting a product on like Nutrisoil or applying any other technique and then being able to look at the landscape that little bit differently from a new paradigm, new things start appearing, you know, and you can then start making decisions from that. Yeah. So there's plant health, there's soil health. What's your experience from like a human food consumption point of view?
Yes, well, we're a very healthy family, so that's kind of where it all comes from. Lynn and her sister Jill have the most amazing veggie garden, and we have our own meat, and that's just how it's always been. So we really want that for others. We know that plants grown in a regenerative system have more complexity in their root systems. So I talked about those amino acids and all those additional compounds, or you could call them secondary metabolites. They're actually really important, and we don't talk about them enough. We talk about nutrients all the time, but nutrients are important. But having that conversation between a plant that has high nutrient compared to a plant that doesn't, with regenerative, organic and conventional are pumping nutrients into them all the time. So they could have really high nutrient content, but they're missing the other fats that are essential, the other vitamins that are essential, and in the soil, those complexities. So with the human body, we are so complex, but we're just like a plant. So we need amino acids, we need diversity of microbes. So if we don't have diversity of microbes in our gut, we can get really depressed. It's a mood enhancer. We know that when we eat something really high and sugary and we feel terrible. Yep. We need amino acids for our hormones and enzymes and everything to work. And interestingly, what depletes amino acids in the soil and what depletes amino acids in a human is the same thing. It's a high amount of urea, and it's also heat, so overgrazing, and heat in us, like having a temperature. So we need to realise that we could be eating an apple or we could be eating a banana, but it doesn't have the same nutrient integrity if it's grown in a really healthy system. So for me, my biggest passion is to be able to walk into a supermarket one day and everything there is healthy for me. So why are we growing food with poison and that's quite accepted, and that poison is on our food? And it might be in parts per trillion, but if a mum eats that and the fetus has that, then that baby is affected. And we're not thinking long term. So we want complexity in our food, we want nutrition in our food, and we want low chemical load. So our farmers, not a lot of our farmers are organic, that they're regenerative, so they're using less chemical, and a worm liquid biodegrades chemical in the soil. So if you think of all the different microbes that come out of the gut of the worm, you've got your nutrient solubilizing microbes, you've got your microbes that protect the plant from pests and diseases and exude these peptides, which are like chains of amino acids to kill pathogens. And we've also got these microbes that are bioremediation microbes, so they break down chemicals in the soil. So there's just so much complexity there that we're missing in a conventional system. And I've seen, I've gone to an amazing organic farm, and they have this beautiful, rich red soil, and their root systems are straight down and lots of soil around them. And we've jumped the fence, same soil type. It's really pale, and the root systems, this is the worst I've ever seen, but I needed sunglasses to look at them. They were so white, and they were all clumped together like this, just a big mat of them, just a mat of root systems that were all white. They didn't go into the soil at all. So if we're growing food like that, where's the microbial complexity going into our food system, and where's the diversity of microbes? So if we could get this food system right, the health system will just have nothing to do.
What a wonderful world.
I know. And we can put all of these people that work into the health system out growing food. Like, we're a bit unbalanced.
I agree. Soil lovers, I hope you're getting so excited about worms as I am listening to this. I'm learning so much in this conversation. And, that's why I think we always need to be learning. And these little creatures that are out of sight, out of mind, and kind of grubby and illed in society are so magical and creating so many benefits. And just even that link between the gut biome and the soil biome. And really, I feel like in the last decade, there's been more and more research, and a lot more is becoming peer-reviewed and cited in our everyday world of that link. And importantly, the links to our mind. I've heard things of like our gut is our second brain, and the chemical imbalances in our gut is causing a lot of other effects in our business, in our bodies, whether it be inflammation or health concerns. It's just really interesting to see how many research is going into that. And coming back to the soil, and that's why I keep digging deeper into it, is because it keeps fascinating me about all these solutions.
Yeah, I mean, if we could have a world of people who had a healthy mind, a healthy body, and a healthy spirit, that would just be such a peaceful world, wouldn't it? It
would be great. And not if, hopefully it's just when. I think we're going past that tipping point of if it's going to happen. I've noticed, especially in the last 12 months, pandemic, it's changed the landscape. It's gotten people asking different questions, and farmers are starting to sell more directly. Consumers are starting to ask better questions of where their food's grown, who's growing it, what's the system being used, and that is very empowering, to say the least. Are you finding the same with the farmers that you're talking to?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So the industry is getting bigger, but I think there's a bigger picture going on with the consumers. So we're getting it to be kind of cool and funky to know where your food comes from and having those conversations. But that's our social side. We're also very, very busy, and people who are very busy make decisions just to get by each week. So I'm just as guilty. So I have 2 children, and I work more than a full-time person, and I run a farm. So for me, I can't grow my own veggie garden, but I'm absolutely blessed that my mother-in-law does. And I have soup in the freezer every day that's homemade from the garden. Like, I outsource people to do these things for me. So I just think there's a bigger picture with the consumers where we need a whole shift of role functions and priorities, because we're getting so busy. And to be healthy can be really busy. So we all need to work together to work this out.
Yeah. And that, part of slowing down and just appreciating, and I know it's a very hard thing to do, being a business owner myself and being in that hustle culture for a very long time. It is very hard to switch off sometimes, and meal prepping and where's the food coming from? I'm guilty too. I'm glad you admit it as well. He's like, we are busy, and sometimes there is that impulse buy of not good food, or, not knowing where it comes from. And I think that's where we do need a little bit of permission to say it's a process. You can't just go cold turkey on this stuff sometimes. You need to slowly change different things in your life, focus on one thing a week or one thing a month and just learn about it and go deeper in it and detox our body and detox our households and, understand where the food comes from and so with Nutrisoil and the soil and the worm fun that you talk about, what's one of the things that's been kind of most inspiring to you and share a story of like a farmer that's maybe, had a great case study?
Look, I can't go past the Haggertys. They're very special people, Di and Ian Haggerty. They farm in the wheat belt in WA, and their intent and their spirituality and when you go out on their farm, it's just, you can't know it until you go there and you feel it, like their native grasses and their little mulla bushes that come up. They're just, you can't believe it until you see it. And that is intent, and that is making it non-negotiable. And they've of course they've gone through those really hard times, and they've really struggled. But to see a 4-ton crop with no nitrogen, so healthy, where not far away we were picking crops through the fence that were riddled with disease and were not harvesting the same they were. It was just beautiful to see. But we do work with nature in regenerative ag. I don't want people to think that it's like that every year. So that's what it's about. It's about riding the highs and the lows, but over the long term, you get a really good consistent yield, and you've got this amazing purpose that you can live for and gets you up in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. What a great story. And I know Helen and Hugo have spent some time with them, Ian and Di Haggerty, and a great enterprise has been built. And I think they've even been featured on Australian Stories recently as well. So if people wanted to dig deeper and see their story. And what was one of the things that I was a bit saddened on that story was that sometimes they have to sell their produce to the normal commodity market because the demand of it isn't there. And this is why I'm a big advocate of we, the consumers, the power of the people, need to ask for better food and create that demand from the bottom up, and the system will change,
And that's where I was trying to sort of go to before, like we are busy. I don't think we're going to change our lifestyles. That's just not what I think is in the future. I think what I see in the future is us needing to support these farmers to be regenerative and to pay more for their food. Pay more for their food so that we're not paying at the doctors and so that we can keep the lifestyle that we want.
I love that. I agree. We pay the same. We're in the same net position over our life. We either pay now or we pay later. And I know it's hard for some people, and I'm self-included, run many startups, and I, bootstrap all the way. And it is very difficult sometimes to, pay the price at the checkout. But I'm also a believer that over my life, we all pay the same roughly. Whether it be in treatments or disease down the future. And we're not a health show, and I don't want to, go, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. But it's just clear from me from seeing so many people go down this path that it's, we pay the same net position. And the other thing is when the demand increases, the prices are going to drop. It's supply versus demand. It's marketing 101. So we are paying more for organic because the demand isn't there. It should be that's just the way that our supermarkets are stocked. Everything's organic. Everything's regeneratively grown. And then the prices will be on par because there's just the supply chain efficiencies that get built into the system. So, and you mentioned the word regenerative, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. So the word regenerative ag or being a regenerative farmer, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so when we keep talking about organic being expensive and I think about it in the supermarket in this small little section, and you go to that part and it is more expensive and it doesn't look as fresh. They've sourced it from somewhere overseas, and regenerative is about growing with less but not none. So it's not about no imports. It's not about no chemical. Like, we don't want consumers to be so scared of a chemical. We all use chemicals in our home, on our hair. Also, you know, you have to be a really pure person to use no chemicals. And I know they're out there, so I don't want to offend them, and they're probably on your podcast. But we need a healthy soil and a healthy body that buffer those chemicals a little bit. So it's about getting down to as low as you can go profitably. So we know that there's a point with nitrogen where the root systems become white. We've seen that under the microscope. So a little bit of nitrogen, 5-10 units, it's okay. A knockdown at the start to get that crop up is okay, as long as you're biologically feeding that crop and you're putting a seed inoculant on, and you're putting all the parts of the system together. So I think, and I never want to say never, but I think organic isn't something that is going to be achievable for the whole world, but I do think that regenerative is achievable for the whole world. Yeah,
I love that. And I just want to hit home on what you said at the start, is that it's not none, it's some. Like, I agree with this because, you know, we sometimes come across these techniques and people go, oh, I'm not allowed to disturb the soil, I'm going no-till, I'm going to sell my tiller. But that's not the solution, because sometimes you might need to aerate the soil, and that's actually going to help, you know. So we got to not go cold turkey on stuff, and just reducing what you're doing and making some small steps, some small tweaks. And sometimes it's even just as much as the farm between our ears. It's the mindset change. It's the paradigm, reading the landscape differently. That speaks more than throwing out all your chemicals or selling your tractor, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even just a paradigm shift. It's also working on yourself so that you're the best version that you can be. Your mind is as healthy as it can be, and your body is as healthy as it can be, because that's when you can put out the right energy to the world, and that right energy comes back, and then it just keeps going out from there. Like, I'm very big on energy and about, you know, the vibration of thoughts. So if you're thinking fearful thoughts, you're going to put out that energy, and that is going to come back at you. Where if you're positive and you're looking forward to things, and you're peaceful, that's going to come back to you, and that just starts to build that around even our office here. So at Nutrisoil, we talk about these things in our meeting, and we're all aware of it. We've actually got the vibrational scale at our coffee station. So if someone's not feeling great, we go, where are you on the scale today? You know? So yeah, it's everything. And that means we've got to have healthy food with good diversity of microbes in it, with complexity of amino acids in it. We've got to have good sleep, so many things. We could start on a health channel here, I agree. So let's go back to the soil.
Well, I wanted to go back to the soil. I wanted to know whether you had a soil interest or a health interest before, because you've mentioned that you kind of married into this family, but was it there beforehand, or have you explored this after that?
I wondered if anyone would ever ask me this question publicly.
There we go. The first
I grew up on a small property, and we had our own meat, and I was always meat and veggies. But my dad loved lollies. Like, we were lolly fiends, sugar galore. Like, every day we would drive to town, he'd get $2 worth of lollies. And, you know, so I didn't eat very well when I met Darren. And, like, he'd ask me if I wanted a drink, and I'd say, yeah, can I have a Coke? And he'd be like, you can have a glass of water. So I would say that the Maddock family have made me a lot healthier, but I did grow up on a traditionally healthy property. It's just that we did have a lolly fetish, and you know, not that healthy.
I'm very grateful, because the way that you've explained everything today has been super clear, and you know, you can tell that you're super passionate about it, and it's contagious, because I'm just like, maybe I need to go and do more about worms, you know. Yes. So yeah, it's definitely piqued an interest for me. Soil lovers, I hope that you're getting just as much out of this podcast as I am. And if you wanted to see Ian and Di Haggerty, you can check it out at soillearningscentre.com. nutrisoil.com. I do know that that's in the archives. You might have to dig deep, and the video version of this podcast will also be there. Nakala, I'm so grateful for this conversation. I wanted to ask you our signature question. Are you ready to be the voice of our soils?
I am. Well, hopefully it trusts me to speak on its behalf. Fire away.
Excellent. So if you were the voice of our soil, what would you say to us on Earth?
Let me have complexity. Don't simplify me. And it's about your thoughts as well. Put out love into me. Put out love to others. Put out love to animals, because we're all connected.
I love that. Absolutely. I love that whole, like, don't simplify me, and I am complex,
Yes.
Understand my complexity, Don't get confused and thrown and drawn away from it.
Yes, and the soil loves us. It will look after us. It can do all things that we try to synthesize. It can act as a pesticide, as a fungicide, with a healthy biological system.
Yeah. If we just get out of the way and let it do its thing.
And support it because we're farming it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, if anyone wanted to hang out with you more, how can they reach out? What website links can you share?
So, you can find us on our website, nutrisoil.com.au. You can come and see us and see our worm farm. We're open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. We have biological farming roundtables, so we go across the country connecting to all of our Nutrisoil hubs. So our Nutrisoil hubs are groups of farmers geographically across Australia who are broadacre farmers. We have a podcast, the Biological Farming Roundtable podcast. You can listen to that, where I interview farmers on what they actually do on their farming system. And if you're a farmer, a broadacre farmer, and you wanted to get involved, that's really exciting at the moment, because with our hubs, we've got groups of farmers. They're probably 20 in each group across Australia. You get an amazing bulk buying rate, and we organise that for you. But you also get a community. You get an independent soil coach come out to see you that will help you with other inputs. We know Nutrisoil is part of the system, but let's help you transition. And also that's with Lou Carrington from Regen Agriculture. And then we have David Hardwick, who supports our hub members or our broadacre farmers with a course called Reboot Your Soil, so that people really feel like they can make their own nutrient plan decisions without having to flounder around not knowing what to do. So we've got a really supportive environment that we can help you out with.
There you have it, soil lovers. You have absolutely zero excuses of not being able to discover more about Nutrisoil, because you just heard it there. There is so many ways that you can get involved, whether it be podcasts, whether it be the roundtables, whether it be getting someone on your farm and joining in on these hubs. Like, I think you've just made it really easy for people to get started and start digging deeper into this wonderful world of vermicompost and worm castings and juice and whatever you want to call it. It's just super fun, and your access and reach to it. And as always, all the links will be around the show notes or around this video. Any final parting advice, thoughts that you'd like to leave our soil lovers with?
Oh, no, I think that I was asked all the questions of things that I wanted to share. I'm excited for your podcast to go out. So is it going to be directed to farmers, consumers? Where's it going to sit?
Going to sit more between farmers and consumers who are interested in soil. One of the things that we've realised is that more and more people are realising in their own backyard that they've got the power to make soil choices. And that is creating a great curiosity of people who are then inspiring farmers to go, wow, there is a group of people who really care about the way that I'm growing food. And I want it to be more nutrient dense, and I want it to be more profitable per acre. And I don't want to buy the farm next door and have more land and work harder when I could just scale down and grow smarter, And so, I'm really excited about that bridge, the gap between, consumer and producer. And a lot of people have an issue with this word consumer. And I think, well, if you want to change the narrative, stop consuming so much and start producing more, So we all got the power to change how we are labeled and what we refer to ourselves at. But in Marketing 101, you've got consumers. And at the end of the day, that's what we are. We can white label, we can, rebrand it as like foodies and all these other words. And I just think, no, that's just shying away from the truth. Like, we are definitely consuming more than what we're producing. Produce art and become an art producer. Like, I'm not saying you have to grow food, But we just need to get back to that, being more producers, produce content, produce videos, write a book, do something that's going to change that conversation and that label.
Absolutely. That's really exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It's been an absolute bundle of joy, and I can't wait to share this with the world. Thank you very much for, getting your hands dirty and digging deeper with us today and our soil lovers.
Loved it. Thanks, Ray.
Excellent. Soil lovers, until next time, get outside, get your hands dirty, start counting your worms, and appreciate the work that they're doing, and keep digging deeper into our soils. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.